that number is not a judgment on you. That number is a number. Okay. And whatever that number is, it doesn't have to stay that way. And if you make bad decisions or you undermine your progress, you're going to go backwards.
This is By Joanne Season 2. I'm your host, Joanne Chan, and every Wednesday we bring you inspiring stories, powerful message, and fun conversations with me and my special guests and friends, and it's my personal mission to empower you to live and lead a life with joy. This podcast is for you if you're looking for more joy, courage, passion, and purpose in your life. Now let's dive into today's episode and get ready to laugh, learn, and live your life to the fullest. Our guest today is a certified financial planner with decades of experience at major firms. She has seen firsthand that true wealth isn't just about income or assets. It's about clarity, confidence, and the courage to make choices that reflect your deepest values. At Harmony, she created a program that puts the power back where it belongs, in your hands, so you can rise above shame, shift old patterns, and build a financial life that supports who you are becoming. And she's here today to empower you to break the cycle and rise with clarity. So guys, help me in welcoming the founder of Harmony Wealth Academy, Monica Kaufman. Monica, welcome to the show.
I'm so thrilled to be here.
Yeah. So today we are going to talk about money. And it can be exciting, but it can also be overwhelming and stressful. First, why is it so hard to talk about money with our family?
Okay, so in my own family, I'll put it to you this way. Okay, my mother does not. Last year, my brother asked me to go back to our hometown and to spend some time with my mother and my stepfather. Okay, my stepfather and my mother have been married. It's a second marriage that's been successful, 37, almost 38 years. Phenomenal. And they're very happy together. They have the same basic personality and values, which is why it works. But they were born in the 30s. My mom at 38, Earl is older than she is. And they both were scarred and have the money story of their parents really struggling through the Great Depression. And so they really had a hard struggle. And a lot of people have had this, and everybody has to come through this. But this really affected my mother. My mother's family did not invest in her. The money and the resources went to her older brother. So she grew up, she told me she had her first job between second and third grade, I think. Yeah, it's amazing. It's like, who hires that? But it was in the Great Depression, and they knew she needed it, and they knew that she was working hard, and they wanted to see her succeed. So somebody found a way to excuse it and hire her. And that's how she paid for her school clothes and her school shoes. She wanted books. She didn't have books. They didn't have money for books, so she had a library card. And so she never, ever handed the books in late because she couldn't afford the fine. And she wanted to go back and get more books. So she made up her mind when she got married the first time when she was older, that she was going to live differently and she was going to build a life. And when my parents' marriage got divorced, when my parents' marriage ended, all of those financial fears came crashing down back on top of her because she had sacrificed for her family. And I grew up with this. So my mother's experiences affected her. I was 6 when my parents got divorced. It affected me. But my mother had pride, and my mother worked, and she rebuilt, and she rebuilt, and she rebuilt, and she married somebody who shared her values, and he had gone through some challenges as well. And so they were both very committed, and they shared them. And I walked into this conversation with my mother and my stepfather, and I do this all the time with people. And because I'm her daughter, it was not something she really wanted to discuss with me. And it brought up all her fears, the lack of control, all of I'm not ready to admit that I have, I don't know how much time I have left. Hopefully my mom will be around for a while, but this really brought back every fear. And she couldn't, I finally had to talk. And at one point, my stepfather, they got very upset. My mother got upset. And my stepfather looked at me and said, "Why are you here to talk about this?" He said, "The money is going to be divided between the 6 of you." And I said, "It's not about the money. I said, it's not. It's these documents. And what I want you to do is I want you guys to make things so clear, because we're a blended family, that all we have to do is paint by the numbers. Whatever it is you want done or don't want done, we have it laid out. There's no debate. And so what I'm saying is that there's this money story that comes in. There's always more than one generation that has experiences, fears, aspirations, struggles, things that don't work out. And it all impacts, and it has impacted me. So my mother, just a short thing, my mother and my stepfather moved into a senior community. They have an apartment in this place. So they went down in size of what they have. She had to give up all of her books. That was a very traumatic thing for her. Not all of them, about 80% of her books that she'd collected throughout the years. My mom did Book of the Month Club back when that was a thing. Okay. I do Audible Book of the Month. Okay. She did the hard copy, and she had them, and she took care of them, and she dusted them. And they were just a sign that she'd left all that behind. And now she had to give up those books in the process of her move. That's a big loss. All of the little things that she'd collected throughout the years, those were big losses. So all of this comes through. There's fear, there's pride. They don't want to admit that they may not know what they're dealing with. There's a loss of control. People don't want to acknowledge that maybe they've made a mistake. People don't want to discuss the truth of what's really going on with their money. And so they project out an image that the people who truly achieve financial freedom. So let's define that. That means, in my head, and this is the way I look at it, financial freedom is where whether you work or whether you don't, you can pay your bills and you can carry your personal financial obligations and loads. So you can take care of yourself and your family and your community to the extent you want to, the way you want to, whether you work or whether you don't. And to do that, you need wealth that pays you underneath it. So you have to transition income that you earn to build wealth that pays you and replaces your income or need to work. Okay. And a lot of times people work because if they don't, they'll go crazy and their spouse will get upset. And that was my parents, but we'll leave that aside. Okay. It was like, it was a bad day when Earl stopped working. Okay. Not because my mother didn't want to spend time with them. It's just, too much togetherness can be a little bit rough. Anyway, so you have to really understand that the people who are truly successful are not interested in your approval. They don't care. Okay. They live according to their values. They're responsible. They're kind. They do the best they can. They're not looking to try to impress you with what they have or what they don't.
That's so true. So I believe this is what you teach at your academy. It's not just about designer bags, right? It's about building, nurturing a wealth mindset. And you said that a wealth mindset isn't what most people assume. So what is the biggest misconception and what's the truth?
Okay, there's a couple of them. The first one is many people believe they can't achieve wealth. They don't want to admit it, but they don't think they can. And I'm going to tell you that whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're probably right.
Yeah.
But you're not a tree. You don't have to stay stuck where you are. You can move. Okay, so that's number one. Second thing is that income isn't wealth. Income is income. Somebody is paying you to do something. So, like that old phrase, time for money, or knowledge for money, which is great. So that's part of it. The next thing is that people who are financially successful, and I've seen people with lower middle class incomes achieve it. They made a decision, and the power of that decision made them aware of what their true state was, where they were, and they came to an acceptance of the fact that their actions and their decisions put them in that place for good and for ill. And whatever they needed to change, they very slowly, one by one, changed it. And they built it out. So there's that AAA piece that a lot of people don't think about, but that's a very easy thing to do. It's very painful. It can be very, very, very painful. But you go through that awareness, accept the reality of what it is. Do not beat yourself up. If you beat yourself up, if you talk negatively to yourself, that's going to take away energy you need to actually act. And you have to start to believe that you deserve to do better, that you have the right to build out your dreams. If you want to build out your life and achieve your personal, financial, physical, emotional freedom, then you have the right to go after it.
Yeah, you are so right because so many people feel behind or even ashamed when it comes to their finances, whether it's not having enough money or they are in debt. So, what are some of the common mental or emotional blocks that you see, and how can people begin to break free from them and really make a change, really change their financial status?
So you start off with that set of, okay, where am I? What is the awareness? Where am I? If I don't know where I am, and then I need you to literally dream. I need to give you permission to dream. I need you to describe to yourself, usually in writing. You need to write this out. What you want in your life, what you don't want in your life, who's going to be there with you, what does it look like, what does it feel like, what does it smell like? Okay. I want you to put all those different things. What are you doing in your life? And I want you to draw that picture out. You have to be able to tell me where we're going, because if we don't have a target, okay, I can't get you there. So I need to know where you're going. And if you're going to be aimless and you're not going to give yourself permission to state in very simple sentences, this is what I want, there is no chance we're going to get you there. Absolutely none. So that's another emotional piece that we have to do. And then sometimes we need to talk about with a lot of people that inherited money story that does not serve them. We need to know why. Okay. What is it? What are the decisions they make on a daily basis and where do they come from that have led to you to be in this place? I've had to do this in my own life very recently about an issue. And quite frankly, it can be very painful. But the reality is, it does not get better until you hug that cactus. You got to figure out what that is so that you can shift and act. And then we use different cognitive techniques to help you get there. And then the second piece is while you're building that out, we work on building what I call the financial defenses. And so you learn how to build up some of those defenses. And as you build that out and you start living that, because it's action based, short, discrete, simple actions that you can take. And then after you do that, we turn around and we start learning. You learn the system so that you come in and you're able to make decisions. The way I look at this is, have you ever heard the word resilience?
Yep.
The old-fashioned definition
Mm.
is, and I'm a Gen Xer, so let me put it to you this way: Gen X, the Karate Kid. You get knocked down 6 times, you get back up. Okay. So here's the thing: resilience is great because it means that when you get knocked down by life, you're getting back up. When we build those financial defenses and the more knowledge you have and the stronger you are, you may not get knocked down. You may get stopped for a second. You may get knocked around a little bit, but you may not go down. But if you do get knocked down, you get back up faster. And if you don't get knocked down, you move forward faster. So the goal is that forward movement, not to stay still and to keep moving towards the path. So one of the things that I talk to people is we're looking to build out something that I call grit. Gratitude, resilience, instincts, and tenacity. And that tenacity is the ability to hold on to the goals and to keep going and pursuing them. That instinct is born through experience. So you use the word confidence, right? Confidence, the way I define it, is you cannot lie to your subconscious. So you feel confidence when your mind accepts, your subconscious accepts, you have the skills and the ability to handle whatever is coming at you. You walk into a room and you know what? I've got this. I know what I'm doing. I can handle this. And that's what confidence is. So you have confidence when you have the instincts and the knowledge and the exposure to be able to handle whatever happens to you. Now, gratitude is that first piece, and it's the ultimate biohack because what happens is gratitude allows you to reframe. So let's say I'm not where I want to be. I've got debt. I've got an issue. I may be late on my payments. I've damaged my credit, whatever it is. That's where you are. You accept that's where I am. My decisions made led me here. Gratitude means instead of yelling at myself, I can turn around and say, you know what? Today is the day that I can change that. I can start the process to change that. I have the power to make this different. Gratitude is knowing that there are people around you. There's at least one person beside you that wants to see you succeed.
Yeah. Right? You want to succeed.
Right. But you also know, and you need to surround yourself with people who are going to value your success, value the process you're going through, and support it. So let me give you an example. Okay. I was working with a colleague of mine. I wound up having the chance to mentor him. And he had some situations that came from his family that he had to resolve, which he did. He was brilliant with that. But at one point, he came to me and he said that he and his fiance, now wife, wanted to buy their first house. And I said, okay, so what's the issue? He said, we've got to come up with a down payment. Okay. So I said, so what's the challenge? Because he was working, she was working. What was the issue? And he said, well, they spent a lot of money on entertainment, going out with friends, going to bars. They had all gone to college together. I said, okay, what if, I said, are they in the same position you're in? Do they have the same goals? He said, most of them do. I said, all right, why not talk to them and say, look, we all want to buy our first homes. And right now we're looking to put aside money for the down payment. It would be really helpful if instead of going out every weekend to restaurants and bars, what if we met at somebody's house and we rotated every week and everybody brings something to drink or something to eat? And that way we spend less money. And he looked at me like I was sprouting horns. And I said, no, there's a reason for this. Okay. So he did it. It worked. And I said, how did everybody feel? He said they felt relieved because they were all facing the same issue. And so by doing this, he and his now wife took a leadership role in their friend group, and they all did it. And he said it was nicer. It was much more low key. It was much less stress. And they all got to their goals a lot faster. And so that's the whole piece. You have to find the people who are going towards the same goals generally, okay, that they want their financial freedom, that they want certain things in their lives. And you need to surround yourself with people like that. And that will reinforce the behavior.
So it seems like, again, what you're teaching focuses a lot on, the mindset, like you mentioned, greed, gratitude, and it's not just about numbers, but you were a financial planner. And we all know that in the financial industry often only focus on numbers, returns, ROI, and technical analysis and strategies. So where do you think traditional financial planning misses the mark when it comes to the human side, the emotional part, and the psychology of money?
The numbers are very real. Okay. So one of the things I do want to talk to you about is how do you measure all of that? Okay. But let's step back from that for a few seconds. I have seen people with very high incomes financially destroy themselves by their choices. I have seen people with modest incomes retire in their 50s early with millions underneath them. You would never guess that they had what they have. So income is important, don't get me wrong. Choices are important. If you do not act in a way that is consistent with your stated goal, the question is, how badly do you want the goal? Because if you're sabotaging yourself, I'm going to say that you don't believe you deserve the right to earn the goal. Okay, so that's first off. The second thing is you have to get out of your own way. And the only way to do that is to really look with honesty, as hard as it might be, at what you're actually doing. So again, we're in the numbers, right? But so one of the things that I'll say to people, because I've had this argument, the old fashioned CPA response was, oh, you go in and you sit down and you go through their checking account, you go through all their bills and you map it out. 90% of the population will not do that. They absolutely won't. What I would rather do is to take their accounts, put them into, most banks will actually let you flip the switch and see by category where your money's going to. I use a financial planning software called eMoney Advisor. It's owned by Fidelity. And there are a couple of reasons why I like it. One, it will let the client flip the switch. You can put all of the different accounts in there and it will let them flip the switch and see by category what's going on. Okay. The second thing that I like about it is that Fidelity does not sell off the material and the information. So if you're putting your information in there, it doesn't mean that you're going to get hit with a bazillion and one solicitations. Nobody likes them. They're a pain in the neck. Okay. So it protects people's privacy. I prefer that. But the point is, what I have done with people is say, okay, tell me where by category you think your money is going on a monthly basis. And usually that's like a 5-minute debate or discussion. Okay, flip the switch. Where were you right? Where were you wrong? 1 or 2%, nobody cares. But if there's a big gap one way or the other, then we need to talk about it. Because when I look at that gap between where they think it's going and where it really is going is the opportunity. Okay, so that's where we start with that on that discussion. And part of the reason why I do that not actually in the first part of this. We do mindset first while we're building out some of the defenses before we turn that switch on. Because I need for people to stop beating up on themselves, and I need for people to start building out and understanding that they really do have the power to make this different. For example, when you get a job, what's the first benefit you should look for? What I say to people is, okay, when I'm looking at somebody and I'm like, okay, you will not have a roof over your head if you don't work, right? The first thing you look for as an employee is not the retirement plan. The first thing you look for is, do they have disability insurance offered by the employer? And if they do, that's the first thing you buy. Because if you buy it in a group plan, it's usually very, very, very cheap, like very cheap.
Okay.
And I've said to people, especially young people, it could be the cost of a Starbucks drink. If it's not a Starbucks drink, it could be the cost of an adult beverage. Can you give up one adult beverage per pay period to know that if, God forbid, you get sick or you're in an accident and something happens and it's not your fault and you can't work, your bills are paid? Okay. And it replaces, if it's done correctly, it replaces 60, 70% of your after-tax income. But if you pay for it, and usually the premium is so tiny, if you pay for it with after-tax money, you literally don't get taxed on it. So it really replaces almost all of it, okay, for most people. And so that is a lifesaver. I have seen that be the difference between, survival and not for people.
Right.
Okay, so that's number one. And that's a recognition that until you hit that financial freedom point where you have enough wealth that you can afford to live without working, you're vulnerable. Okay, that's an acceptance piece. And, like old fashioned, my mother would say, oh, well, there's Social Security disability. Well, that takes 2 years to get. It doesn't pay. It's fully taxable. This is something concrete you can do for yourself for a very affordable piece if your employer offers it. So that's number one. And then the next thing that I will say to people is, okay, if you don't know what your numbers are, how are you going to figure out one of the defenses you need to have, which is an emergency fund? I had a client who about 2 months before the shutdown, she was in banking in the financial industry. Her husband worked for the government, and she got involved with one of the financial planning programs, doesn't matter which one. And it was not communicated and taught well when she received it. Okay. Not that the material was a problem, but whatever. So she and her husband got into a lot of debt. They borrowed money from family. They paid it to pay it off. And then they were paying the family off at a faster rate than what was agreed upon. And I said, okay, that's great. How much do you have in an emergency fund? And she blew and she said, how could I possibly need an emergency fund? I paid the debt first. I said, what happens if you cannot work through no fault of your own? It's not like you threw a hissy fit and did something stupid and got fired or quit. What happens if you can't work? She said, why would that ever happen? And I said, because stuff happens. She was laid off.
Wow.
During COVID. And she called me right after she was told. And she said, I need you to know this is what happened. I appreciate what you tried to do for me. And I said, what are you going to do? And her comment to me was to the effect of, well, I'm going to wind up back in debt to my family. That's what that emergency fund is. Okay. And so the question is, people used to say, oh, you need 3 months or you need 6 months based on whatever. And I said, no, that's something where I talk to people and we do guidance on that. I have had people who don't even need 3 months worth of emergency fund. They are here from another country. They have their ticket to go back. They are on a month-to-month lease. Literally, they have so constrained their spending and they've been so frugal that 90% of their after-tax income is going home and invested. Okay, fine. All right. Do they need 3 months emergency fund? No. But there have been times when I've said to people, really, do you really think you only need 6 months? And they've said, no, maybe I need more.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about this. And, I've said to people, like, let's say they've started a family or they're going to start a family. Maybe they want a little bit more than that. Maybe they want to make sure that not only do they have an emergency fund, especially if they're starting a family, that they have their HSA, their health savings account, fully funded and built up a little bit. So there's reasons to have this. And maybe it's not a hard and fast 3 to 6 months rule. But how do you know what that monthly expenditure is if you don't know what your monthly burn rate is? So the numbers are very real, but you can't look at the numbers objectively, or you won't. You won't bother to look at it. You won't process it until you get to a point of emotional acceptance where you can deal with it.
But what if people are just really afraid to look at numbers? How do you do?
Right. Because numbers aren't very fuzzy. They're not very fuzzy. A 3 is a 3, an 8 is an 8. You can't really argue with it. I mean, it just is. But again, here's the other piece. That number is not a judgment on you. That number is a number. Okay. And whatever that number is, it doesn't have to stay that way. And if you make bad decisions or you undermine your progress, you're going to go backwards. But if you make good decisions, on average, most of the time, you're going to go forwards. So it's a question of being in the here and now, in a moment of acceptance, to say, I'm going to make this act today. I can do this today. There's so many different ways psychologically to start looking at that. So one of the things that we'll do with people is we'll create what are called power affirmations. Do you know what affirmations are? Do you use them?
I don't.
Okay. So there are a couple of problems with affirmations. One, you can't lie to your subconscious. So you can't say, I can't turn around and say I'm 5'11". Okay. Because my subconscious is going to laugh at me. Like, no. Okay. There's no chance. But, all right, you have to tell the truth, but you also have to leave no room for doubt. Because to protect the mind, to protect the body, the mind will trend towards the lowest common denominator, or the minimum viable outcome. All right. That's not what you want. But there's another problem too. There's an imposter syndrome issue. There's an issue where we are incredibly hard on ourselves. So when I say I do this, or I can do this, I know I can do this. When I do this, I'm really chastising myself. I'm not saying it in a positive way. So what do? We flip it. Instead of actually talking to ourselves like that, because I would never talk to you or anybody else that way, okay, or 99% sure I wouldn't do it. We turn around and say, okay, I want you to talk to yourself like you're coaching someone you care about. I don't care who you imagine you're talking to. I want you to talk to yourself in the same words and the same tone of voice with the same body language that you would use if you were talking to somebody you care about, you coach, you like, you want to succeed. And we start that way. Okay, so we build that out. And every time we reinforce a behavior, we reinforce it with the affirmation and we track it. And when you see that you are actually doing the actions and you monitor that, you get the physical proof that you can do it. One of the other things that we do is we set up the expectation, like most things, like athletics. Athletics and your body are probably the best example of this. It's the first system we learn how to control. Okay. And the way we measure things for athletics is really great, but success and progress happens beneath the surface. You don't normally see the progress on a day-to-day basis when you're training for a physical event. You see it at the end of a period of time and you can look back and you see where you started, where you got to. It's the same way. So if it happens beneath the surface and you track the fact that you're doing it every day and you know you're having an easier time keeping yourself on track of doing the actions, it's a reinforcing cycle. It puts you into that place. So we do that. We do the success cycle and sewer cycle where we understand and we go through the thought process. So when we talk about ourselves, especially when we make a financial decision that's bad or there's a bad outcome or there's an issue, we have to turn around and say what's real and what isn't. And we have to reprogram the way we think about this. And we have to give ourselves the ability to say, okay, I've learned from the mistake. I'm not going to make it again. And we go on from there. So there's different psychological tools we do. And the point of all of this is that we shift that mindset, and that allows us to build the progress going forward. The final piece of this is that future self vision. Remember where I told you that I need that image?
Yep.
One of the things that we do with people is once they can actually write a future self vision, they will write it out and then I have them record it into their phone. Why? I want them to play it and listen to it 5 minutes, 8 minutes, not long. I want them to play it and listen to it at night before they go to sleep. And then I want them to play it first thing in the morning because I want them to start sending the message that this is who I am and this is what I want and this is what I'm building and I deserve to build this out and to reprogram and make the subconscious start working for them as opposed to against them because they have that they have to shift the mindset. I want them to shift it over and make the subconscious actually get them there. I want them to align the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, the actions to get to the results.
Well, that is a lot of information and that's very helpful. Thanks for sharing it. So now let's talk about something more practical, because as we are recording this today is 31st August and tomorrow will be 1st of September and it's a new month and people are getting a paycheck if they have a job. So to apply everything that we have talked about into action, what is the most important thing or what is the first thing that people should do when they receive their paycheck if they have a job?
Okay, so the first thing that I want them to do is I want them to go into their bank account and I want them to flip on that thing so that they can see where their money is going. And just actually by looking at that, what they're going to do is they're going to shift their behavior. They're like, wow, I wasted money there. Oh my God, what am I doing? Okay. So that's the first thing I want them to do. And I want them to monitor that. The second thing I want them to do, sometimes their bank will have it and sometimes they'll have to sign up for it. I want them to monitor their credit. Now, I don't want them to get neurotic about it. I want them to do this on a regular basis. Now, I had one person who was doing extremely well as an engineer, very, very outwardly successful. He had bad credit because he was not paying his bills on time and he just lost control. And what he had to do in his situation was he woke up every morning and after he got up, got out of bed, did his thing, the first thing he did was he logged online, looked at how much money was in his account. He had put all his bills on auto pay so that it was paid a day or two early. And he made sure he knew every week where the bills were going and when they were going out to make sure that there was enough money in the account that it would clear on time. So that was for him very effective. For me, I'm a visual person. So I have dry erase boards and I have like this command center in the hallway outside my bedroom. And I have different things up on that calendar. And so I visually see it every time I walk past or walk down that hallway. And for him, he needed to look at his computer every single time. And it made a difference. Within about 6 months, he had radically turned things around. Okay. So it's a question of doing those things. Another thing that I want them to do is I want them to be more secure with their electronics because the last thing you want is to be a victim of identity theft. And one of the easiest and cheapest ways to deal with that is to contact the major credit bureaus and close down new credit applications. Why? Because then it's hard for somebody to hijack the identity. And that's usually a free or very low cost option. So that's a very easy, low cost fix. There are so many things you can do at first. And then the next thing is looking at your benefits. If you're working someplace, what are your benefits and when do you have open enrollment? Because if you have open enrollment coming, I want you to put that on your calendar, put that as a reminder on your phone so that 2 weeks before you look at what you have and what you don't, and you need to be strategic. That is your best way of buying certain things and paying for certain things and funding certain goals that you have.
Yeah.
So for example, a lot of people don't understand, depending on how their insurance is structured and how much they're paying on a premium, their share and what they need to understand what that premium is, the out-of-pocket maximum, the co-payments, all of that. And the reason why, like, what's your deductible, what's your co-payment, what's your out-of-pocket maximum, what's your family out-of-pocket maximum if you have a family. And I want them to look and say, hey, if you've got insurance and it's affordable and maybe you have an HSA, sometimes if you open that up and you contribute to it, your employer will put in money. So that's more free money. And the HSA, unlike the older forms of accounts, that goes with you. So you can put money in that. You're not using it to lose it. You're not buying 1,000 tongue depressors, okay, at the end of the year so you don't lose the money. but it goes with you and it can be invested. And then when you get to a certain age, you can use it for all sorts of things, but you can use it. Let's say you are unemployed for a period of 6 months, but you've been putting money into your HSA for 5, 10 years. You can use that HSA money without taxes to pay your COBRA payments to continue your insurance. You can do things like that. It becomes another form of an emergency fund. And the truth is that most bankruptcies in the United States are caused by medical issues, unanticipated medical issues. So you need to understand that and accept that, okay, that's what's going on. If I put the HSA money in and I fund it, especially when things are good, it's there as a buffer to make things easier for me. And then if I have disability insurance and I'm sick, I've replaced my income. Those two things alone, if you do those out, can really, really, really decrease your chances of having a major catastrophic financial event.
How about people who want to make a career change or a lifestyle change? Maybe it's moving to another country or starting their own business, but they are so afraid of making a decision because of financial uncertainty. What if I start a business and that means I have to quit my job, right? And I'm not gonna have any income coming in. So what are the most important financial steps to take before we make a big change?
Okay, so the problem with most new businesses is that they're undercapitalized and people they don't anticipate how much it's going to cost to get launched. So let's start off there. Okay, that's problem number one. Problem number two is if you don't make a decision, that's a decision.
True.
All right. And one of the things we do in that first segment of the program is we talk about risk and what is risk. And there are really different ways to handle risk. We do it all the time. Okay. Do you drive?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a risk.
Yes.
There's risk there. So what do you do with driving? Okay. You pay for insurance because you have to. So you're transferring some of the financial risk there. You mitigate some of the risks by wearing a seatbelt, and your car has airbags and all sorts of safety features. So those are mitigations, but you're not avoiding the risk and you're not absorbing and retaining all the risk. You really only have 4 ways of handling risk in any area. You have those 4 options. You can mitigate, you can transfer it, okay? You can hold on to it and absorb it and pay for it, or you can avoid it. There are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. Everybody has to decide at a particular point in time what trade-offs they're comfortable making and what risks they want to have and how they want to handle it. And so again, it's a choice. Now, business financial planning and advisory is a different thing. And what I would say to people is if you don't have the mindset of having absolute control over your money on your personal side and on your business side, one or the other will pull you down. You have to have complete ownership of that mindset and be financially aware from the get-go, or else you are going to set yourself up for failure.
Yeah. But a lot of people hand over the power, their financial decisions to others, like partners, financial advisors, or even just defaulting to inaction. So why is reclaiming that power, taking that power back so important? Because what if people are just not, great at managing money, they are not smart with money? Like I am personally not very sensitive with numbers. Like I don't even know what I'm looking at. So why not just hand it over to someone more professionals and with experience and know what they are doing?
Oprah Winfrey.
Uh-huh.
Do you know her story?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. So she literally started off with nothing. She was a victim of all sorts of things in her family. And she got fired from her job in Baltimore. And she had faith in herself, got in her car, drove out to Chicago, where the weather is lousy and it's very cold. I don't know where you are, but okay. So she did this because she had faith in herself. Well, when she started her business, she made a decision that she needed to have absolute control over the money. Not that she didn't have a financial person, because she does. She has multiple financial people. But every check that went out, every financial decision that needed to be made, she was right there with it. She learned it and she mastered it because she wasn't going to let somebody else's decisions take her down. She realized something intuitively, which was no one should care more about her financial condition, her physical condition, her emotional, her intellectual, whatever, than her.
Yep.
Okay. And so she took control over it. And even though she didn't come from a family that had the money like that, she learned that system. Now, financial advisors are usually not trained to do a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, and financial advisors are not compensated most of the time to do it. So there's no real incentive to learn it and do it.
Yep.
There are some coaches out there who are very, very good, but most coaches are not necessarily trained, and they focus in on one or two areas, budget mostly. Okay, they don't focus on the larger range. They're not licensed for certain things. So you have a problem where the only thing that advisors are really compensated on and licensed to do are to talk to you about investments. So they sell you investments, they may sell you planning, but that's the limit of what they have. They're not doing a lot of the mindset work or the shifting work. They're not doing a lot of the education pieces because they don't have time.
Yeah.
And so some people get this at home. Some people are built in such a way that they can read a book, see something, and do it.
Yeah.
And then there's the rest of us.
Right.
So that's the challenge. I mean, I know people who read the book, implement, read the book, implement. Okay. I've had clients like that. I've had friends like that. I've had colleagues like that. Not everybody's built like that. Some people need a coach. Some people need a mentor. Some people need a family friend who sits down and works with them on it. That's why I started the academy, because I was so appalled at the decisions that I saw people making. People that really, truly, genuinely knew better. And so the question is, why did you let this go? Why did you do this? What was it that led you to make this decision? And the answer was, look, I just let it go. I just didn't want to deal with it. It was out of sight, out of mind. Are you kidding? And the answer is no, they weren't kidding. That's really, truly what it was. And usually there's something, subconscious or something from their past or from their family that had to deal with money. And that's part of the reason why that happened. But again, what you have to do is you have to learn the system. And I'm not saying that you want to learn some of the advanced stuff and some of the weird stuff out there. You need to learn enough that you understand when you're talking to someone who wants to sell you something, whether it's something you want or whether it's something you don't. Don't ever subcontract out your power on your finances to somebody else. Just don't. It's just an incredibly bad idea. No one cares more about what happens to you in the end than you. And if something happened to you and someone took advantage of you, you'll learn. Okay. As long as you don't lose, as long as you learn and you get back up and you keep moving.
Yeah.
I want people to keep moving forward.
Love that. Yeah, and the last thing I want to talk to you about is income growth, because in order to move forward, we need more money, we need higher income. So what are the ways to build wealth and to grow our money?
Really a question of deferring some of the expenditures, spending and investing. And an investment is something that actually has the ability to pay you. It can pay you two ways, right? The first one is it increases in value. You sell it, you get more money than you paid for it. The second way it can make you money is if it pays you interest or it pays you a dividend, it pays you something along the way. So a stock can pay you dividends. A bond is going to pay you an interest. A bond is basically an IOU. You're lending money to someone or something, and they're paying you money back and then returning what you lent to them along the way at a certain point. So, and again, if you'll notice, I didn't use any jargon there, did I?
Nope. You did.
Okay. If you can't, in this world, in financials, if you can't use regular language, you don't own it. And a lot of financial advisors memorize this stuff and they have a script, but they're not talking to real people.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, it's a question of figuring out the investments and that mix of investments. You never have just one thing. And I don't even want to see you have just one category. There are a lot of people who have rental real estate. Okay, commercial rental real estate. There are a lot of people who have office rentals. They have all these different things. Don't just have one thing. I want you to have your eggs in multiple baskets.
Yeah.
And yes, it means that you have to work a little bit harder to manage it. But with all the technology tools that we have, you're so much better off for doing it. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Thanks for this very informative conversation. Now, is there anything you really want to talk about? Perhaps I didn't ask you or didn't let you?
The other thing that I want to say to people is choose your team wisely. It's not a friendship. I am friends with my clients, but I am also very clear that I understand that I work for them and I have to earn their trust on a daily basis. I have to put them first. Okay. And it's a privilege to work with clients on their money, because money is nothing more than a tool that they use to take care of themselves and the people they love. That's it. Okay. And so this is a very valuable tool and I have to respect it. So I'm very clear. And I want people, don't do this because, oh, this is a guy you know. Don't do this because, oh, you want to support. This person has to be able to meet your needs. And you have to set that bar high. Don't be afraid to say, you know what, I need a team, and this person isn't necessarily my team.
Choose your team wisely.
Okay. Yeah. I just want people to understand that they need to be the CEO. It's their life.
Love that. Yeah. Thank you so much again for coming. Now tell my people where they can find you if they want to connect with you and learn more about what you do.
They can reach me via email. They can reach me by the websites. You'll have all those links.
Yep.
And what's really important for them to understand is if they want to talk it out and they want to have a chance, I will give them the chance to do it. Don't be afraid to just say, hey, help me figure out what I need to do.
Yeah. Alright guys, I hope you learned a lot from today's episode and you now have greater clarity and confidence to go about making your financial decisions. If you have any question, you can always reach out to our guest Monica or you can leave a comment below, and feel free to share this episode with your friends and family or share it on your IG story and tag me at findjoywithjoanne_podcast. And I will always leave you the same way as I leave you with every other episode. Show up. The world needs you and you need you. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all a joyful and amazing day ahead. Thank you again for tuning into Find Joy with Joanne podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and share it on your IG story and tag Find Joy with Joanne_podcast so I know you are listening. And leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already done so. And remember to hit the subscribe button whether you are listening on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, or any of your other favorite platforms. If you love what we are doing and want to become one of our sponsors, you can send me a DM to connect. And thanks for being here. I will see you soon in the next episode.